Hi, I'm Scott, and today I'm going to show you how to build a whiskey cabinet using off-the-shelf lumber from Home Depot on Dad It Yourself. I started this project out by sketching it in Notebook 1.0. This gave me my cut list and my material list. I then began breaking down my lumber using my Ryobi miter saw. This tool and all the other tools I used in this project will be listed in the description if you're interested. Now that all my parts are broken down to their rough sizes, I can do my final measurements and then score all my marks to avoid any blowout during the cutting phase. When I cut wider boards, I prefer to cut the boards laying flat with the miter as opposed to the vertical. I tend to get a square cut with this particular saw. Some people would use a table saw. Mine's not currently set up to cut crosscuts effectively or square. Now that all the cross-cutting's done, I'm just going to knock off all the splinters and burrs with a sanding block, get it ready for glue. I set my table saw up to rip the boards to their final 4-inch width. The boards come in a 5.5-inch width, and in hindsight, I should have used these offcuts as the door frame. I didn't realize that till after I started building the door. Using my router table, I was able to cut the rabbets in the back of each piece that will hold the back panel. I threw this jig together with some scrap wood for the stop dados in the outside of the box that will hold the dividers. The nail is my set point for the stop dado. Here's a dry fit of the outer box showing the stop dados. Using my miter saw again, I'm cutting all the dividers to their rough length and get them ready for installation into the box. Using the same jig I used to put the stop dados in, but this time I removed the nail so the dado will go all the way through. So I'm sanding all of the internal pieces, starting with an 80 grit to a 150 and finally with a 220 before gluing and assembling them up. It'll be a little bit hard to sand these once it's assembled. And here's a dry fit before I glue this thing together. I glued the outer box first, putting some glue on each end grain, letting it soak in and dry a little so that it doesn't absorb as much, and then putting a final bit of glue on there and clamped it. I'll let the glue dry in these clamps for a couple hours before I put the dividers in. And here's the main box with the dividers all glued in, ready to go. I cut the back panel out of 1/4 inch birch to size. This has to go off to engraving before it can be put in. The outside had already been sanded to 80 and 150, and I'm going to sand it down to 220 now and get it ready for stain. A little bit more cross-cutting with my miter saw, building the pedestal base, which includes routing the edges over with a router bit and an OG to give it a little bit of detail. Some glue and brad nails, and this pedestal is done and ready for finish. So not bad for a couple hours of work. Gotta wait for the glass to come from the engraver, and then I'll be able to build the door, put the hardware on this, put some finish on it. Well, that's for tomorrow, so catch you then. All right, it's been a couple of days. I got the glass from the engraver right there, and the back panel as well. So let's get back on this project and get it completed. Laser engraving came out really nice on this back panel. Just sanding down with 220 grit to remove all of the flash and any of the pencil marks. Now that I have the glass back, I can start building the door by rough cutting the pieces. Like I said earlier, in hindsight, I should have used the offcuts from the ripping, and I would have had grain matching them. I built this jig out of a piece of 1/4 inch plywood that centers a groove in the middle of a piece of 3/4 lumber, right at the 3/8 mark, and I run it through both sides to center that groove. So one of the tricks I learned with miters is that I cut one side on the left side of the blade and then the opposing side on the right side of the blade, and this gives me a perfectly square picture frame. And you can see here those miters came out perfect. And a dry fit with the glass in it. If the glass doesn't fit, you just cut the grooves a little bit deeper until it does, which I had to do in this case. And a final sanding with 220 grit on all the door frame pieces before I glue this door together. I'm using the box carcass and some blue tape to make sure all the pieces stay together and squares up with the box. And I'll let this sit with glue and clamps for about an hour or so, and then get ready to work on the hardware. After measuring out for the hinges, I used my palm router to rough out the openings to get rid of most of the bulk, and then cleaned it up with a chisel. self-centering drill bit to drill the pilot holes for the hinges. And drilling the hole for the door closure, it's a neodymium magnet. There'll be one on the door as well. I'm using Simple Finish from Maker brand. This stuff is really easy to use. You just wipe it on, let it dry for 10 minutes, and then wipe on a second coat. I'll have a link in the description if you're interested in getting some for yourself. Now that the finish is done, I can put on the back panel with a little bit of glue and some finish nails. Install the knob and the magnet on the door. And then attaching the hinges to the door using the self-centering drill bit again. Well, this project really came out nice. That Simple Finish from Maker brand really makes that red oak pop. Let's get this thing populated for its intended purpose. The idea from this project comes from the YouTube channel Doing Whatever. I'll have a link down in the description if you're interested in watching that one for yourself. I put this project together with simple lumber from the Home Depot, 3/4 inch red oak and 1/4 inch poplar, using typical joinery methods like miters, rabbets. With a saw, clamps, glue, and a router, you can do this project in a couple of days as well. And the Simple Finish from Maker brand really makes this pop. In fact, the only thing I had to outsource was the engraving. I don't have that capability in my shop right now. If you have any questions or comments, put those down below. Speaking of comments, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. I've got some videos over here you may be interested in, and the subscribe button's right there. Thanks for watching. Dad it yourself.